All right, this is part three. I have the heater inside the box, the PTC, which is a thermistor. And when you put voltage across the thermistor, it warms up, it changes value, it goes up in resistance, and it reaches a point where it equalizes, and you get a certain amount of heat off of it, and it stays within the range. So I put that in the box. I have it wired up. It's got 9 volts across it. And I got totally different results than I expected. Now, the last video I told you about operating the oscillator in open air with the room warmed up, and it stayed pretty good. It stayed about 10 hertz. Now, using the cover, I put the cover on, and I saw no difference. In other words, it's aluminum, so aluminum allows heat to transfer in and out very quickly. Now what you're seeing now is after 2 hours of stabilization with the heating thermistor in there, this thing is going up and down in frequency more than it does without the heater. So the heater basically is putting the circuit into a new range. That's the only way I can see it. In other words, with the extra heat, it's putting the components up into a more gain, causing more drift. I don't know. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go reading about drift. I started to, and I realized that most of the articles start out telling you it's from thermal, from temperature. Well, I know that's not basically true anymore. I think the circuit itself reaches a saturation point, and then the charge changes and it shifts back. I think besides the oscillator oscillating, it's also doing this back and forth motion due to capacitance or internal heating, whatever it is. But external heat is a problem, and external cold is a problem. But the circuit itself is prone to drift, and the better circuits don't drift as much. Like I was telling you originally, this Franklin, no matter what I do to it, it's still better than the PTO that comes with the a Collins. So if you're going to build a go-to oscillator for any type of radio, go with a Franklin. It'll give you a wider range. It works on lower voltage. It has a lot going for it. A Colpitts is pretty good, but they want you to use polystyrene capacitors, and it gets expensive after a while trying to build Colpitts, and their oscillation range where they will stop oscillating is very narrow, where the Franklin, you can go well above and below what you want to do if you got the right toroid wound. In other words, you wind the toroid for the frequency you really want, and then the capacitor you have across the toroid allows you to go up and down in frequency. There's a little bit of work involved for yourself to understand some of these circuits. There's big gaps in data on the internet. Now, when I go looking for everything, or looking for things, I keep ending up on eBay. So many things in Google is set up to sell products, and what happens, it'll refer you back to even a YouTube video that doesn't explain the problem. The person just put keywords in there to get you in to see their video. And I'm trying to be more honest than everybody, but these guys that have lots of views, they cheat a little bit. You know, there's guys in there, Trump was just put in jail and all this stuff during the day that hasn't really happened. Now this thing's back down to 2.5, and it's going to continue to crash and go down. And after it goes down a certain amount, it'll start going back up. I think it's going down 20 hertz and coming back up 20 hertz, so it's varying between 40 hertz with heat. And that's what I'm telling you right now. You're watching it go down in frequency, and it's very interesting. And I'm going to keep looking to see if I could find the person that actually figured out why an oscillator drifts, temperature-wise put aside. And I told you that when you turn a Franklin oscillator off, or any oscillator, within an hour, all those parts should be room temperature, but they don't. They don't change. You turn that oscillator back on, it's close to the frequency when you turned it off. So there's some type of charge in whether it's in the FETs or in the capacitors. But overnight is a different thing. In other words, if you leave, even if you keep the temperature of the room the same, as the hours go by, whatever's holding the charge or whatever's going on finally dissipates. And then you got what I showed you, a cold start on one of the units. But there's stuff going on here, and I probably have to find some really technical data and sift through that to understand what's going on. But I wanted to see, because people say, oh, just to put the oscillator in a metal can. I did. That is a metal can. It's aluminum. I would prefer steel, but I can't bend steel with my Harbor Freight unit. I know steel doesn't transfer the heat as fast. And the other way around this was I could probably put styrofoam inside that box. So whatever temperature is in that box stays within a certain range. There's so many experiments you can do. But this just confirms Franklin is a really good oscillator. But using a heating element in there, like people do, they build an oscillator, they put it in an oven, and they accept the results. And I'm like, well, what will we get if we open air the oscillator first? And then when we close the metal box up, will we see any improvement? Not really. If we put a heater in there, well, what's the range? If you were just to build the Franklin with the heater in there and say it's within 40 hertz, you'd accept that. You wouldn't say, well, I did an open air one, it was 20 hertz. See, that's the thing. If you do a lot of experimentation, you create more questions. And that's where I'm at now. And I'm like, also in the back of my mind, I was trying to understand, in the Collins, they have a tracking IF, and I understand that now. They take the incoming frequency, they block convert it down, and then the oscillator and the IF that they call it a variable IF. It's actually a receiver, and as you tune it, the oscillator and the tunable IF act as a radio, and they go up and down in the frequencies that you're now selecting with the hertz. No, one dial is megahertz and the other dial is kilohertz. I understand it now, what they're doing, and they call it a variable intermediate frequency because it is an intermediate frequency, but it's actually a receiver. The tune front end is the IF, and then there's a local oscillator which mixes it to the real IF of the radio. It's very interesting stuff. Finally I got that in between with this, and it's been an interesting day. But I wanted to follow up on this, and I know I made fun of a lot of videos where the person works on a video and it proves nothing, it doesn't do anything, and they still post it. Now I showed you how to make the box, and I told you about the oscillator, how I laid it out. You did get that, and the fact that the oscillator, Franklin's a really good oscillator, but the fact that I put a heater in the box and it didn't make anything better. And that little PTC, that actually regulates the temperature inside that box. And yeah, I can go really overboard. I could put a thermistor in there and then read the voltage on the outside and see what's really going on in the box. But you know what? It's not something simple. I wanted something simple to make the Franklin. Now, right now she's sitting there bobbling for a while, and it's pretty interesting when you watch this go up and down. And then it takes about an hour to stabilize without using the heater. With the heater, it didn't help. I tried to get everything across to you what I found, because you know these guys on the internet, they shoot from the hip. I just put it in a metal box. Yeah, that'll make it more stable. Will it? Well, I did the test. It really didn't. Put it in an oven. Yeah, what does that do? You know, if you put it in an oven first, you'll never know what the ambient temperature or room temperature, how it would work. Will it be even more stable because you're not bringing the components up into a range where they're going to have a difficulty. Now, I think she's going back up now, the oscillator. It's getting ready to go back up. It's very interesting. You know, I had a piece of paper and I'm charting this thing as it goes up and down, and it's going up. It's going back up again. And why? That box, I won't say that box is sealed, but that box has a thermistor in there that's holding the temperature. So the oscillator itself is drifting for other reasons, and that's what I'm going to go look for. And hopefully I'll find the Holy Grail. And if I do find a Holy Grail, I'll do another video and explain to you that someone actually figured this stuff out. Because a lot of the information that's on the internet is old tube stuff. And there could be a Holy Grail book on solid state oscillators. And someone has done this work. And sometimes, I might have to buy a book to be able to read it. But almost everything is online if you look around for it. But I think that's about it for the project. I really want to get back to the Collins idea of how I want to make the local oscillator track, because the Collins uses electromechanical. They use circuits and they use gears. And to do that type of circuitry without the gears, I'll have to use varactors, variable capacitors, variable diodes that are capacitors, varactors. And you got to get them tracking correctly. See, when you're looking at a company that had several engineers working on it, and you work on it yourself, you're stuck with solving all the problems. You don't have a machine shop. I need this gear to that gear, and the guy turns the gear out for you. You're stuck with what you can buy on eBay. I think that's it. All right, that's it.